Welcome back to another episode of Bombshell 1111 Girl Talk Series Podcast. Bombshell 1111 is a platform created to teach ways to nourish the mind, body, and soul. This platform allows this podcast to create weekly content on podcasts with special guests each week that will stimulate your spiritual, mental, and physical growth. The podcasts are played on social media platforms such as Spotify, YouTube, Anchor radio station, Apple Podcasts, and more. This station has been created to allow us to interact with each other to share knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and light. So without further ado, please help me welcome your host and founder of Bombshell 1111 Girl Talk Series, Keya.
Everybody to another episode of Bombshell 1111 Podcast Therapy for Women of Color. My name is Keya and I'm your host. Tonight, you guys, we have a very, very special guest by the name of Jennifer Rahner. She's a sexuality educator. So without further ado, let's welcome her to the podcast. Hello, Jennifer. How are you?
Hello, Keya. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for coming on and deciding to be a part of the podcast.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Yeah, it's quite a honor to have you on the show because I think this is a topic that a lot of people talk about in personal conversations and probably even with just researching and wanting to know more, for themselves. So I thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge and your expertise on these topics.
Well, I've been looking forward to it.
So, Jennifer, let's just go ahead and jump right in. So,
okay.
I know over the couple of past few weeks that I've been, doing a lot of promotion for this podcast, and I've shared your bio, and so people had the opportunity to read that. Excuse me, but I want you to also be able to give a formal introduction yourself. So, can you let the audience know who you are, where you're from, and pretty much what you do, and how you came up with the concept?
Okay. Well, my name is Jennifer Rahner. 5 years ago, I was coming up. I just turned 50 this year.
Oh, woo-woo.
So around 45-ish, I was kind of looking at my life and going, life is okay. I have a decent job, but I'm not really excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about what, coming up on 50, what did I want to do for the rest of my life? Mm-hmm. And I've been a professional writer for the past 25 years. And so mostly I was thinking, what do I want to write about that's going to excite me for the next part of my life? Mm-hmm. And I kept coming back to sex. Yeah. I mean, it was just kind of a no-brainer. Because ever since I was 15 years old, that was when I first had the idea of going into sexuality education, laying in my bedroom at night, listening to Dr. Ruth on the radio.
Okay.
So before the internet, before you could just Google something to find out, that was where I got my information, particularly about sex, because, and most of us have sex ed classes.
Yeah.
But they focus a lot on reproduction, anatomy.
Yeah.
They don't really tell us anything about pleasure or pleasing a partner or even pleasing yourself. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of left to figure that out on our own. And before there was Google, there was just a lot of wondering all the time.
Yeah.
So, laying in my bed at night, listening to Dr. Ruth, I was like, wow, I want to do that. So, fast forward 30 years later, when I was reassessing my life, I was like, why not? Why can't I do this? I can do this.
Yeah.
So that's the path that I chose about 5 years ago. And I've been through a lot of exploration since then. Mm-hmm. But I've found that my path is to teach primarily vulva owners and people who move through the world identified as women more about their bodies, how to experience more pleasure.
Yeah.
And how to come to terms with what sexuality means to them.
Okay. So Jennifer, with all of that being said, and having a better understanding of what you do and the education that you provide, you do have 2 different websites, bodysexbyjennifer.com, geekysexlove.com. Can you tell us a little bit more about those 2 websites?
Absolutely. So bodysexbyjennifer.com is actually my newest project, and that's my solo practice. Mm-hmm. That is where I do work primarily with vulva owners and people who walk through the world as women. The other website, Geeky Sexy Love, has been around a little longer, and that's my joint practice with my partner, Sean, where we teach on a variety of topics, but most of those topics have to do with communication and communicating with a partner about your needs.
Yeah. Okay. So, Jennifer, since we've gotten the introduction out of the way, let's just go ahead and jump right into the podcast, which I know a lot of the listeners in the audience are waiting for the questions that they may have on their brain, mm-hmm. That they may want to answer to. So the first question that I have for you, I know you said you have a lot of education in regards to the path that women walk, mm-hmm. but in regards to sex as a general, can you help the audience to understand what happens during an erection, or what happens during the time that a woman is reaching a climax, the 2 difference?
Absolutely. And there are differences and there are similarities that we didn't even really understand until about the last 2 decades.
Okay.
So picture a penis, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It starts out flaccid.
Mm-hmm.
As a penis gets excited, blood rushes to the area. It fills up erectile tissue, which is what gives you the hard-on. Mm-hmm. And then it's actually it fills up the erectile tissue, which makes it even a little more sensitive than it is when it's flaccid.
Yeah.
But once you have the hard-on and then you have stimulation, you can then move pretty quickly towards orgasm. The thing that we really didn't know before, and when I say before, it's really, really only been in the last few decades. The female clitoris mm-hmm. is essentially the same structure as the male penis. It's just hidden.
Mm.
So most of us know the clitoris as the little point or dot at the top sticking out that's really, really sensitive. But the clitoris is so much more than that. There's more structure to it that is underneath the skin that wraps around your urethra and your vagina and can be stimulated by internal means. So, if you are one of the lucky ones out there who can orgasm just from penetration, that's actually a clitoral orgasm too. Because you are stimulating parts of the clitoris. They're just the parts of the clitoris that are under the skin. Now, for most women, they need at least the external clitoris stimulated, but their orgasms are even better if they have both the external and the internal parts of the clitoris stimulated. And the really big difference between penis owners and vulva owners is that it takes the average woman 20 to 30 minutes before she has an erection. Because all of these parts of the clitoris that are underneath, they have erectile tissue too that fill with blood. But it takes longer because ours is hidden away. So the biggest tip that I can give anyone about making someone with a vulva happy is to take your time and to not really try to get her to orgasm until she's completely stimulated. So, we've been saying for years, foreplay is so important. This is why it's so important.
Wow. And since you are talking about tips and things of that nature, I know a lot of men may have a question that they want an answer to. Mm-hmm. Do you have any tips on what you may say, in air quotes, is best for the best blowjob?
It really differs from man to man. I mean, it differs from person to person, no matter what parts you have. However, my best tip for making a penis happy, especially if you're a partner, is to ask your partner to masturbate for you and watch them. Mm-hmm. Because if you watch them, then you can see what areas they stimulate and they focus on. And for some men, it's that area right under the head, the mm-hmm. frenulum, just under the corona of the penis, just where that ridge is. That's usually a very, very sensitive area. And, a lot of times if you watch a man masturbate, you'll see that he's really focusing on that area. Some like complete, shaft involvement and want you to mm-hmm. cover all the territory. While others really kind of like a tight squeeze at the base of their penis. Some like their testicles stimulated as well. Others don't want you to go near them.
Right. Yeah. A lot.
So, in terms of it, if you have a penis yourself and you're stimulating yourself, what I recommend for that is really just pay attention to what areas feel best for you. But with a partner, ask them if you can watch them, because that's going to give you so much information about what you can do to make them feel pleasure.
So, Jennifer, speaking of masturbation,
mm-hmm.
if a woman masturbates with a dildo or a vibrator too much, does it make her insensitive to regular penises?
Yes and no. So, you can numb out the clitoral nerve endings if you are using vibration to come to orgasm on a regular basis. So there are several things you can do so that this doesn't happen. One is to not focus directly on the clitoris. What you can do is actually use the vibration just above your clitoris and kind of vibrating the pelvic bone area. What that does is it's a sensation that is pleasurable. It might take you a little longer to get there, but mm-hmm. it doesn't have the effect so much of numbing you out. The other thing you can do is to hold a vibrator there and kind of use your hips to thrust up to it to have more contact. And again, really what is going to numb out your clitoris is to use vibration on it directly with a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, if you find that you're having difficulty reaching orgasm with a partner, take a break for a couple of days and you'll find the sensitivity comes back. It's nothing where you're going to do permanent damage. You're not going to make yourself incapable of having an orgasm with a partner. But certainly if you are regularly masturbating, and when I say regularly, like if you're doing it on a daily or every other day basis and you're always using a vibrator for stimulation, then yes. In terms of dildos, not so much. I haven't heard of that being a problem in terms of reducing sensation.
So Jan, let's just say if a woman has a lot of sex over the years, does her vagina necessarily get looser?
No. The vagina is a wonderful thing. And think about it. It stretches out to give birth to a baby. And, if you've seen an infant's head, it's small, but it's not that small. It's pretty substantial.
Yeah.
But there is the tissue in the vagina is very, very flexible. And if you do, especially after giving birth, but if you do feel like you're not able to squeeze when you have something inside of you, then that's very easily remedied by doing Kegel exercises. And you can, just like you go and work out at the gym, you can work out your pussy.
Yeah.
And you can do it anywhere because no one knows you're doing it.
Right.
All you do is just kind of squeeze up, and it's the same sensation as when you're peeing and you want to stop the flow of urine. That's the muscle that you want to squeeze. So you can actually practice that way. Like, can I stop this? And then you know, oh, that's the muscle. That's the muscle. And you can just sit there. You can be in the car. You can be on the train. You can be at dinner. You know, it really doesn't matter. You can do these anywhere. You don't need any special equipment.
Oh goodness. So Jen, let's keep going here. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So speaking of Kegel exercises, what do you think about the yoni beads? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, like the big ball, like the balls that are connected to each other? Oh, yeah, they're helpful. I mean, they help you do Kegels because it's something to kind of grab onto. Absolutely, those are beneficial. And I think some of them now come with apps that like tell you how much you're squeezing or something.
Wow. Wow.
I haven't tried those. It's a great idea though.
So Jen, let's talk a little bit more. Is there really a such thing as female ejaculation, or air quotations, squirting?
Yes, there is. And the number one concern of people that this happens to is, oh my God, am I peeing? So female ejaculation is absolutely a thing. And it's not exactly peeing. There's a really fascinating study done that they actually took a group of women who were able to do this, and first they had them go to the bathroom and pee and completely empty their bladders. And then they did a vaginal ultrasound. So that's like the ultrasound that goes up inside you. But what they were able to show with that vaginal ultrasound is that on all of these women, their bladders were completely empty when they started. Then they had them stimulate themselves, as they did when they were able to make themselves squirt. And before they actually got to the point of squirting, they stopped them and they did another vaginal ultrasound. And what they found on that one was that the bladder had filled up very quickly with fluid. They let them go back to what they were doing, had them stimulate themselves completely to the point of ejaculation, and did one more vaginal ultrasound. And what they found on that was that the bladder had completely emptied again. Then they actually took samples of the fluid, and they studied the samples of the fluid. And what they found is that the fluid was primarily water. There were trace amounts of urine, which makes sense because if it's the bladder that's filling and it's the urethra where the fluid is coming from, which it is, then it makes sense that there would be trace amounts of urine. But it wasn't all urine. The other thing that they found is that there was this fluid produced by something called the Skene's gland. And this gland is pretty much the same gland as the prostate in the male. So you probably won't see this in porn because they don't show it this close up. But if you actually watch a woman ejaculate, what you'll see at first when they start to squirt, you'll see kind of a milky substance come out first.
Yeah. And
then what you'll see is a lot of clear liquid. The milky substance is what comes from the Skene's gland, and the clear liquid is what comes from the bladder. But the theory is that something about the stimulation used to get you to ejaculate makes your bladder kind of collect all this water from your body and uses that to ejaculate.
Wow. Now I know. And now I know.
I can also tell you how to make yourself do it if you want to try.
You can For the audience, yeah, for the listeners that want to know, you can let them know. Go ahead, Jen.
All right. So remember, I was talking about the clitoris and how that wraps around your urethra and it wraps around your vagina, and you stimulate it. You can stimulate it from inside. So what you do, we've all heard of the G-spot, right?
Right.
Well, the G-spot is actually a combination of those pieces of the clitoris that you can reach from inside the vagina and something called the urethral sponge. That Skene's gland that I mentioned is up in there too, right? So if you're stimulating the urethral sponge and stimulating those internal parts of the clitoris, that is what helps you to squirt. And sometimes you have to play with it a little to figure out the right combination for you. Yeah. I can tell you the right combination for me is, I use a stainless steel dildo that it's curved and it's got a larger ball on one end and a smaller ball on the other end. It's called the Enjoy Pure Wand, if anybody's looking for it. It's one of my favorite things in the world. But I use that, the end with the ball on it, and I stimulate the area of the G-spot, which is about 3 inches inside the vagina and then up toward the belly button.
Yeah.
When you find that area, and especially if you use something like this that has a ball on it, or somebody's fingers can usually stimulate it, you want to rub around that area. And for some people, just rubbing the urethral sponge can do it. For me, I kind of like it off to the side. So it's kind of like it's stimulating the urethral sponge, but it's also stimulating the internal parts of my clitoris. And yeah, that's what does it.
Oh, thank you so much, listeners. There you have it. There's your tip for today. So, Jen, I have some more questions for you. I have more questions. So, you know, a lot of guys, they use this excuse for us women to do certain things. Says that it's a good source of protein. So let's ask a real sex educator. Is semen a good form of protein?
Well, I don't know if it's define good.
Yeah. Is it a form of protein?
Yes, there is. Well, I mean, there is protein in semen, right? There's something like 5,000 milligrams of protein per 100 milliliters of semen, right? So your average ejaculation is about 5 milliliters of semen. So fucking minuscule, just a little tiny bit of protein, because there's not that much.
Okay, well, I can definitely skip out on that protein. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
you know, maybe the listeners may need some protein, but I'm good on that. Yeah.
I think the most important thing with that is that, you know, you're listening to your partner and you're trying to do what makes them happy.
Yeah.
If I am asked to digest more protein, then I ask him to digest more pineapple juice in his diet, because it is true that ingredient in pineapple juice makes semen taste sweeter.
Right. That's why a lot of women like eating pineapple as well. Yeah. I know that tip. Yeah. So, Jen, let's talk about, you know, individuals who have partners and they may shy away from, you know, sharing very intimate things such as having sexual fantasies. Do you have any tips on helping partners talk with their partner about having sexual fantasies without feeling embarrassed or ashamed?
You know, that's a tough one, because shame is so ingrained in our culture. And, you know, I can say all day that the best thing to do is to talk to your partner, but I know how hard that is. Even as a sex educator, sometimes when I go to talk to my partner, I'm like, I really want to tell you something, but you know, it's still hard. Some of the ways that you can, you know, kind of bring up the subject. You know, I know that for a lot of guys, porn is a thing that they enjoy. I also know for a lot of women, porn is not a thing they enjoy. But actually watching porn together is not necessarily a bad thing. so that you can kind of be like, it's kind of like when you were young and you'd watch movies with your parents and then they'd bring up sex, right? Like,
Yeah.
do you have any questions about that? So there are some porn sites too that are more geared toward women and aren't necessarily as objectifying and
raunchy.
Not as raunchy. There's one called Bellesa. I think it's Bellesa, which is it's kind of like a porn hub type site. It's it's free and they're collecting stuff from other places, but all of the porn is geared more towards a woman's taste.
Okay.
Not quite as raunchy, and usually has a story.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Any more tips or suggestions?
So one thing that I do say is that, and this kind of fits into the people who want dirty talk in bed. This kind of fits both of those things. So when you are with a partner, one of the sexiest things you can do is tell them what you want. And this is a way where you can kind of feel out where your partner is and how they're feeling. So, say you're with someone and they're doing something that you really, really like. If you say, I really like what you're doing, please don't stop.
Okay.
And that sounds simple, right? It sounds simple.
Right.
In the moment, it can sometimes be really difficult to say, but bite the bullet and do it, because you'll find that your partners really respond to you opening up and telling them what you want and not being expected to guess what you want. If there's something you want that they're not doing, or if there's something you want that they're not doing, but they've done it before, just a little, hey baby, remember when you licked my pussy with your fingers inside me? I really like that. Can you do that again? It goes a long way. And you can do the same thing with fantasy. I mean, obviously, there are things that you want to talk about when you're not in bed. But when you are in bed and you're really excited, whispering in your lover's ear, hey, I've been thinking about this. What do you think? It can, what that can do is get you both excited talking about it in the moment while you're connecting sexually.
Yeah.
Finally, there are so many books on sexuality that it's a good idea if there's something you're interested in, one, to educate yourself on it a little bit more, but two, if you bring a book home like 50 Shades of Grey and leave it out for your partner to find, that's not the most direct way to talk to them about it, but if there is something that you're interested in, get a book on it and leave it laying on your nightstand as a way to start conversation.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. So, Jen, I have a couple of more questions for you before we end tonight's podcast. Okay, so I have a question pertaining to sex, of course. We talked about, of course, vaginal sex. We've talked about oral sex. Let's talk about anal sex.
Okay.
We know how anal sex works, but exactly, can you explain to the audience why some people sometimes tend to choose anal sex, what the pleasure is in that?
Well, I mean, that whole area has all of the same nerve endings as your genitals. So there are a ton of nerve endings around your anus. Having any sort of stimulation there can be just as pleasurable as stimulation to your clit or stimulation to your penis. And partly what is exciting about it is the taboo against it. The fact that we're told that we're not supposed to do it makes it something we might want to try. Like, I remember when I was young and my parents were like, you cannot go to R-rated movies. All I wanted to do was see an R-rated movie because they told me I couldn't. So there is a lot of taboo factor there.
So for individuals who do like to, have anal sex, do you have any tips, any suggestions to make it more pleasurable
Absolutely.
for them?
Go slow. That is, honestly, any hole is really not the hole to be ramming yourself into, but that hole especially, you don't want to surprise someone with that. You want to talk about it a little bit beforehand. You want to have so much lube on hand to make sure, because that that is not self-lubricating like the vagina. So you want to make sure that you have lube for that. And you want to make sure to have stimulation before you ever attempt to put a penis in there. So, stimulation can be with fingers. For some, stimulation can be with tongues. Stimulation can be with other little vibrating toys. They're good there. I usually recommend that people start with just using lubrication and rubbing around the entrance without trying to go in, and see how someone feels about that. Then start with fingers, and oh my God, make sure your fingernails are short. You don't want to get stabbed there by fingernail.
Right.
The other thing, kind of like one really good kind of entrance to anal sex is those anal beads. Anal beads, they're not very difficult to get in. They're little tiny things, right? You can get bigger ones, but you can just get, little small marble sized ones and they're silicone. And the act of putting them in very slowly while you're excited can be really pleasurable. And then what's even more pleasurable is right when you're having an orgasm, pull them out. Something about them popping out of your anus intensifies your orgasm. So that's a really great place to start if you want to see if that's something that's really pleasurable for you. And then, as you're ready, you can introduce a penis. But again, very slow, lots of lube, and listen, when your partner might go, "Ooh, wait, too much." If we're talking about penis into a vulva owner's anus, using a vibrator on your clitoris and making sure that you're very stimulated that way can make the anal sex more pleasurable and easier to handle, and not as painful, because it can be painful, especially depending on your partner's size.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I have 2 more questions for you, Jen, before we end the podcast. I know we've been talking a lot about, the different forms of sex, and then different tips and different techniques and things of that nature. But I wanted to also have 2 questions for individuals that may want to experience pleasurable sex, but I have also experienced maybe past traumas, such as, sexual assault and things of that nature. But now they're in a good place in life, and they want to be able to experience those things with their partner. How would they be able, or do you have any tips on how they would talk to their partner about things of that nature?
Well, it's certainly a conversation that's best had before you're sexually together, before you're sexually intimate, so that your partner understands what things may be triggering for you. Obviously, I would hope that someone who's experienced sexual trauma has had support of a therapist so that they can work through these things. But even when you work through it, you're still sometimes triggered out of the blue. I actually, especially if you've experienced trauma, I would recommend taking a practice from the BDSM world. In BDSM, there's always an agreed upon safe word that partners will, agree upon before they do anything, so that in the moment they can call out the safe word and their partner knows, whoa, something's going on. They need to slow down. A lot of times the safe words used kind of in general follow a stoplight, right? So green is good. You don't really need to say green. As long as things are good, you don't need to say green. But if you say yellow, then your partner understands that something they're doing is causing you a little stress and that they should, back off of whatever it is they're doing. And if you say red, your partner knows that they need to stop immediately, that whatever they're doing is bad and you need to stop and talk about it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And then Jen, another question. For those individuals who are struggling with their sexuality, they may be struggling between, men and women. Do you have any tips or any suggestions on how they would be able to talk to their partner about that?
I mean, that is a difficult thing, especially if, if you're in a partnership, male-female partnership, and you are feeling like you're attracted to the same gender. Your partner will feel like, oh my God, am I not enough, or am I not, did I do something? It's a difficult conversation to have. And I don't know that I have any specific tips that would help ease that, except that being honest is always better than hiding parts of yourself away.
Right.
I would probably seek the support of a therapist to help you out with that. Because they can actually help you figure out how to start the conversation and what you might encounter during that conversation.
I agree. Totally. So Jen, before we end tonight's podcast, can you let the audience and the listeners know, do you have any upcoming events, webinars, major things coming up?
I do. Soon? Most everything is virtual right now. Like the rest of the world.
Right.
I'm right in the middle of doing a 10-week workshop that's about discovering, remembering, and understanding and processing your sexual stories. And I'm working with a group of 7 women right now with that, and it's going so well, and I've had more interest that I'm going to start another group in the beginning of November.
Wow, congratulations.
I don't have all of the information up on my website yet, but you'll find that on the Body Sex by Jennifer website. And I am also contemplating a group for men as well, because I don't think that this kind of work should be limited to women. It helps us to talk about sex because it helps normalize it so that we can have conversations like this. But also working through your sexuality and gaining a better understanding of your sexuality just helps you move forward and have more pleasure and satisfying sex in your life. And I'm thinking about when I'm going to start it, but I think the information is up on my website. I'm also doing a body sex workshop virtually, and body sex is a workshop that came out of the work of Betty Dodson. It is for vulva owners, and it is kind of an intense exploration into body acceptance, receiving pleasure, learning masturbation techniques, and how to not increase your orgasms, but enhance your orgasms.
Wow.
Yeah, so those are both on Body Sex by Jennifer. We don't have anything upcoming right now for Kiki Sexy Love. But you can join our mailing list on either or both of those sites, and we'll keep you informed of what we've got going on.
Wow, you have a lot coming up. So thank you so much for that. And congratulations again on your upcoming endeavor. That's a great thing.
One of the things that's really great, I don't want to say one of the things that's really great about COVID, because, COVID's not great. However, with the shift that we've had, is so many classes are now available online that I can work with anybody across the country and even around the world.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be like that for a very long time. So I think it's going to be a very, what's the word to say? It's going to be a great endeavor for you, I know, because it's going to be like this for a long time, having to do everything virtually. And right now, this is how a lot of people are working. This is a way a lot of people are even, communicating with just their loved ones.
The classes I'm offering can certainly help you connect better with the people that you can be around on a regular basis.
Yeah, because you're going to have to be around them quite a lot. And I think this is also good for, individuals who may be struggling within their marriages, or not even just struggling within their marriages or partnerships, but just a way for them to help build on what they currently do have. So I think you shared a lot of great information for individuals who are in partnerships, or, wanting to have a healthy partnership.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Thank you for that. But before we leave for tonight, Jen, can you just let the listeners know your contact information, just in case someone wants to reach out to you individually for a session?
Absolutely.
Or for more information?
The best email for me is hello@bodysexbyjennifer.com.
Okay, you guys. So you heard it here. Jen, again, thank you so much for coming on and being a part of the podcast tonight. Your information was very powerful. I had so much fun with you because of the topic, and you were fun yourself. So, again, thank you so much. And I wish you the best on your upcoming endeavor. And hopefully you'll come back to the podcast and share some.
That'd be great. I mean, especially if you get more questions from your listeners, I'd be happy to come back.
I'm quite sure I will get some feedback.
Well, thank you, Keya. I really enjoyed myself.
Thank you so much. So you guys, without further ado, always remember you are a bomb within your own shell, and have a good night. Peace, love, and light.
Great.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure you subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted. Rate, review, and share this podcast with your family and friends. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you're leaving with some valuable information that can help you on your personal journey. Also, check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at Bombshell 1111 or at Bombshell 1111 TV. You can also check out our mental health page, Your Health is Your Wealth, on Facebook, which is a page created to inform and support individuals with mental health and other health conditions. And with that being said, always remember, you guys, you are a bomb within your own shell. And until next time, peace, love, and light.